In this video, we expose the deadly illusion of taming the untamable, when the wild breaks free and human arrogance meets a predator's truth. From a zebra turning on the woman who believed 10 years of care made it family, to an alligator erupting from black water to drag down a thrill-seeking vlogger. The first story begins as a zebra, once treated like family, pivots in panic, its teeth severing flesh, and its hooves breaking bone in seconds. In the parched, late dry season heat of the Zimbabwean savanna, on a struggling private animal sanctuary outside Bulawayo, 48-year-old Eliza Thorne prepared for her daily ritual. The air was thick with the smell of dust and dry grass. The sun a relentless white-hot presence in a vast, empty sky. For 10 years, Eliza's world had revolved around Kichaka, a mature male Grant zebra she had raised from a foal. She moved with a practiced, casual familiarity, her every action underpinned by a profound and deeply held belief in the unique, unbreakable bond she shared with the animal. In the dusty yard, a visiting veterinarian watched with a growing sense of unease as Eliza prepared to enter the enclosure. "His ears are back, Eliza," the vet warned, his voice low and serious, gesturing towards the zebra, who stood rigid, watching her every move with an unnerving intensity. "He's been agitated for weeks." "That is not a happy animal." Eliza waved a dismissive hand, a sad, knowing smile on her face. "Oh, that's just Kichaka," she said, her voice filled with a misplaced maternal affection that bordered on defiance. "He gets grumpy when he thinks I'm leaving. He wouldn't hurt a fly. We understand each other." This was her critical misjudgment, a fatal anthropomorphism that blinded her to a decade of clear, escalating warning signs, a delusion that would soon be corrected by a brutal and unforgiving application of natural law. The creature in the enclosure was a prime specimen of Grant's zebra, Equus quagga bami. A zebra is not a striped horse. It is a fundamentally and irrevocably wild animal, a creature forged in the crucible of Africa's predator-saturated plains. The primary lesson in understanding this encounter lies in the stark biological reasons why this species has never been successfully domesticated. Unlike horses, which evolved in hierarchical herds amenable to human leadership, zebras possess a flat social structure and a hair trigger, explosive flight or fight response honed over 60 million years of evolution. Their bite, designed for tearing tough savanna grasses, can sever a human finger with the efficiency of a bolt cutter, and their powerful, accurate kick, a primary defense against lions, can deliver over 3,000 pounds of force per square inch, enough to crush a human skull. A forensic analysis of captive zebra behavior reveals that habituation is not domestication. An animal may learn to tolerate a human presence in exchange for food and security, but this is a fragile, conditional truce, not a bond of affection. The animal's genetic blueprint, its programming to react to perceived threats with immediate, overwhelming violence, remains perfectly intact, a loaded weapon waiting for a trigger. The foreshadowing of the attack was a 10-year-long history of willfully misinterpreted behavior. Kichaka's jealous nipping, which Eliza had always laughed off, was a low-level aggressive warning. His playful kicking of the fence was a territorial display. His habit of pinning his ears back was not a sign of a bad mood, but a clear, unambiguous signal of agitation and potential aggression. Eliza, filtering these classic signals of distress through the lens of her human emotional narrative, saw not a wild animal communicating its stress, but a pet expressing a complex, human-like personality. The critical decision was an act of misguided compassion. A tractor on a neighboring farm backfired, the sharp percussive bang echoing across the dry landscape, like a gunshot. Inside the enclosure, Kichaka startled violently, his body tensing, his ears swiveling in a state of high alert, his powerful muscles bunched and ready to explode. Eliza, seeing his panic, made a fatal choice based on her delusion, believing her presence would be a comfort, a reassurance to her child. She unlatched the gate and stepped inside to calm him down. This act, meant as a gesture of love, was a catastrophic violation of every rule of animal handling. She was inserting her soft, fragile body into the immediate confined space of a panicked 1,000-pound animal whose entire nervous system was screaming danger. From Kachaka's perspective, the world had just exploded in a threatening alien sound. His adrenal system was flooded, his instincts on a knife's edge. The sudden appearance of the familiar human figure inside his enclosure at this precise moment of extreme stress was not a source of comfort. It was the immediate tangible focus of his terror. He was cornered, and she was the closest, most immediate object in his environment. The attack was an instantaneous, explosive reaction. There was no charge, no aggressive display. One instant, Eliza was reaching out, her voice a soft, cooing murmur. The next, he pivoted, a blur of black and white, his head snaked out with the speed of a striking reptile. In that instant, his jaws clamped down on her hand. The pressure was immense, a crushing, grinding force. She heard a series of sharp, distinct cracks as the bones of her thumb shattered like brittle twigs. Then, with a quick, shearing tear of his powerful incisors, the digit was severed. A moment later, as she screamed and reeled back, a geyser of blood erupting from the wound, he lunged again. His teeth, stained with her blood, found her chest. He bit down, the powerful jaws closing on the soft tissue of her breast, tearing a deep gaping wound. As she fell backward, he lashed out with a hind leg, a single, reflexive kick of pure panic. The hoof, a hard, sharp weapon of bone and keratin, struck her forearm with the force of a sledgehammer, and she heard the sickening wet snap of her ulna breaking. The attack was a brutal convulsive spasm of pure instinctual violence, over in less than 5 seconds. The brutal convulsive violence was over in less than 5 seconds. The farmhand, drawn by the single, sharp scream, arrived to a horrific scene. Eliza was on the ground, cradling her mangled arm, her shirt soaked in a spreading stain of crimson. The zebra stood over her, its sides heaving, snorting, its panic slowly subsiding into a state of aggressive agitation. The official medical response was swift, but the damage was irreversible. The emergency room report was a clinical, forensic accounting of the attack's mechanics, a traumatic amputation of the right thumb at the carpometacarpal joint, a significant avulsion of tissue from the right breast, requiring extensive reconstructive surgery, and a compound fracture of the left ulna. The incident left her permanently disfigured, a constant physical reminder of a 10-year delusion. What happened here leaves us with one hurtful lesson. Never underestimate what a wild animal is capable of. The belief that you have a special bond is a dangerous illusion, one that shattered for Eliza Thorne in a matter of seconds. An expert in exotic animal behavior would later state that a pet wild animal is a dangerous and arrogant contradiction in terms. 10 years of peaceful cohabitation is not proof of a bond. It is a 10-year lucky streak that can end in a single violent instant. The attack on Eliza Thorne was not an act of betrayal by a beloved pet. It was a predictable, biological reaction from a wild animal that was pushed past its breaking point. Her life-altering injuries are a permanent, forensic record of a dangerous illusion, a brutal testament to the fact that you can take the zebra out of the wild, but you can never, under any circumstances, take the wild out of the zebra. The final story crashes through the still water as a hidden alligator explodes upward, clamping its jaws onto a man's leg before the death roll drags him under. On September 3, 2025, a clear morning in the Florida Everglades gave way to a punishing humidity. The air was a thick, wet blanket, clinging to skin and clothes, making every breath feel like a chore. Light slanted through the cypress trees, dappling the murky water of a slow-moving channel. It was the kind of morning where the only sounds were the chirping of crickets and the low, guttural croak of bullfrogs, a false sense of peace, in a landscape that never truly rested. Leo Vance, 32, was an online personality whose brand was built on a calculated recklessness. His channel, Outlaw Adventures, was a highlight reel of him doing what most wouldn't, handling venomous snakes, free climbing cliffs without a harness, and in this case, wading into the known territories of apex predators. His audience, now over 2 million strong, tuned in for the adrenaline rush. Leo's core belief was simple. A real man, a true professional, could bend the laws of nature with enough bravado and a camera. He'd spent the last year bragging about how he'd get a close-up with a gator bigger than any seen on a nature doc, a real king as he called it. "Just get the shot, man," Leo said to his cameraman, a nervous kid named Mike. "They're basically glorified lizards. They just want to chill." His cavalier attitude was well documented. He'd ignored park ranger warnings, laughed off locals who told him about the tideline traps the big ones set, and dismissed the dozens of cautionary tales about tourists who thought they were smarter than 100 million years of evolution. He stepped deeper into the water, a sleek black drone hovering 30 feet above him, its rotors a low buzz in the stillness. "Look at this guy," Leo narrated into the lavalier mic clipped to his quote. "Shirt. Been here 10 minutes and not a single monster in sight. Just a whole lot of nothing." He wasn't wrong. The channel seemed empty. But in the deep black water, a predator's eyes were open. The American alligator, Alligator mississippiensis, is a biological marvel of ancient engineering. A full-grown male, like the one watching Leo, can exceed 14 feet and weigh over 1,000 pounds. Its jaws are a weapon of raw compressed power. With a bite force of over 2,900 pounds per square inch, its skull and musculature are designed for one purpose: clamping down. Its hunting strategy is a textbook case of patient ambush. It floats just below the surface, its eyes and nostrils the only parts breaking the plane of the water, a piece of floating driftwood. It hunts with an almost perfect efficiency, a patient, cold-blooded killer. It's not a pet, it's not a plaything. It is a working creature whose sole purpose is to consume. And for it, the water wasn't a channel, it was a hunting ground, a black water labyrinth of roots and silt. The warning was a single, small detail that Leo's bravado had dismissed: the stillness of the water. Park rangers and local guides had told him, and anyone who would listen, that if the water was unnaturally still, with no ripples or movement, it was a sure sign that a large predator was lying in wait. Leo, focused on the perfect shot for his vlog, ignored the profound silence of the environment, the eerie absence of the normal rustle and chirping. Mike, however, felt a creeping dread. "Hey, Leo," Mike called out, his voice a low tremor. "Something feels off, man. Maybe we should just get the drone footage and go." Leo, still moving deeper, scoffed. "You want to tell a story about something feeling off? No one watches that. This is the good stuff." He moved farther from the bank, the water now up to his thighs. This was the critical decision, the single action that placed him squarely in the kill zone. His need for spectacle, for a new high for his audience, had blinded him to the basic laws of survival. His character trait, his arrogant dismissal of risk, had become his critical misjudgment. From the alligator's perspective, the world was a different place. The drone was a distant hum, a noise that didn't register as a threat. The man was a warm shape, a vibration in the water. The alligator's lateral line, a sensory system running along its body, picked up the slightest ripple, the smallest displacement of water. It was an alarm bell, a dinner chime. The gator's body, coiled and dormant beneath the surface, felt the water move. It knew the moment the man's weight shifted, the precise angle of his leg. It was not a creature of emotion, but of pure mechanical hunger. The strike was sudden, without a sound. It was an explosive surge of water and muscle. The alligator didn't lunge. It uncoiled. The movement was a blur, a sudden eruption of violent primal force. One moment, the water was calm. The next, it exploded in a chaotic maelstrom of foam and mud. The gator's head, armored and immense, launched from the water. Its jaws snapped shut on Leo's left leg, a sound like a wet branch cracking. The force was crushing. Not a tear, but a compacting squeeze. It was a lock and seal, a vice. Bone and muscle turned to mush. The animal's body shifted, twisting. It was the death roll, a devastating maneuver designed to tear flesh from bone, to dismember and drown. The gator began to spin, its entire body a propeller of destruction. The force twisted Leo's body, his leg a pivot point, the torque pulverizing his femur, the ligaments of his knee, the tendons of his ankle. It wasn't a bite to kill, not yet. It was a bite to take down, to disable. Leo felt a searing, unbelievable pain as his leg was wrenched in a direction it was not designed to go. The spin was faster, the world a sickening kaleidoscope of green and brown. A second later, Leo's body was ripped away. The water was now red. Then, there was only silence. The predator, with its prize secured, submerged into the murky depths, a ghost disappearing into the blackness. The water stilled, a few bubbles rising to the surface, the only evidence of the violence that had just occurred. Mike stood on the bank, a statue of horror, the camera still running, capturing the empty space where his friend had just been. The authorities arrived within an hour, a team of park rangers and a search and rescue unit. They found the camera, its lens still recording the last moments, but there was no sign of Leo. A forensic investigation of the area revealed a single shredded shoe and a few pieces of fabric snagged on a submerged root. Autopsy reports later identified the remains as consistent with an alligator signature attack: blunt force trauma, massive internal organ damage, and dismemberment consistent with a death roll. The medical examiner's report was chillingly clinical, listing the catastrophic injuries: crushed femoral artery, multiple compound fractures of the tibia and fibula, complete separation of the knee joint. The impact on his family was profound, a sudden and brutal end to a life lived on camera. The online community, which had once cheered his dangerous stunts, now watched the grim aftermath in stunned silence. The Outlaw Adventures channel went dark, a memorial to a man who thought he could outsmart nature. What happened here leaves us with one permanent warning, a lesson written in blood and bone on the banks of this channel. These are not pets. They are not friends. They are not co-stars for a YouTube video. The alligator is a perfect killing machine, built by 100 million years of silent, cold evolution. When it looks at you, it doesn't see a human being, it sees a meal. And you can't argue with hunger. So what do you do when a predator's territory becomes your playground? You get eaten. It is a simple, brutal truth. And it is a lesson that is never taught, only learned. Saying goodbye is hard. Let me know where you're watching from, and tell me one thing I absolutely have to see or do if I ever visit.